to how much greenhouse gases that we are actually. So that's very
Mine was
exciting.
64 kilos, I still remember. Just a lot. I was shocked.
Yeah, and we don't store, we don't keep, we don't freeze them. We immediately bring it to the nearest available beneficiary. So
And
good food labeling, food very
nice,
good.
very good.
Very good.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
good.
So I actually, my husband's friend referred you guys to us. And so when I looked it up, like, you're based in Subang. I thought I know about these guys. After my wedding, Angela, Alvin, come to my office. We need to talk about this. Yeah, because I saw the beneficiaries and I'm like, Subang, we have so many each one these.
So
And so we started opening all the doors. And then like everything that you are here,
yeah.
there's no more beneficiaries for you to channel
Yeah.
to.
All right, okay, Philippines is here, Vietnam is here. All right, we're gonna get started again. Very. All right. So we have Philippines, Vietnam. Are you here? Can you just unmute and say like here, mine? Are you here?
We're all here. All good.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect. So we're gonna move on to the next question, which is for Alvin. Um, so Alvin, what makes What a Waste unique among other food initiatives like food banks or soup kitchens in Malaysia? Like what differentiates you from that?
Um, not sure. We have always viewed ourselves as a food rescue specialist, if you like. Orthodox term to start off with, right? We are not a food bank to start off with. We are not a soup kitchen, right? Because when we started the course, we actually built our identity in the wedding scene from corporate events, right? Now, what happens in a typical wedding scene is that we actually recover surplus food from the events and all, because in Malaysia, seemingly every week we have a lot of wedding events, going on, especially in the Saturdays and Sundays and all. So we told ourselves in understanding the root of food waste in Malaysia, what actually happens is we deliberately went into an area where 95%, if not 99% of the organizations that exist in Malaysia in the name of fighting food waste would avoid, right? Because we ventured into an area where we had to face very high elements of risk, which is to directly deal with ready-to-eat meals, right? You have to understand when and how food starts to deteriorate, because these are ready for consumption and all, and it's been cooked and it's been served, right? Now, a typical wedding scene in Malaysia is that you either have the dish out style or you have the buffet style. So what happens is when we first outline our SOPs, right? It has got to be above board. It has got to be tip top because it's unprecedented. And we told ourselves that we're going to do this to actually send a strong and stern message to members of the public, the Malaysian public, on the whole area of food waste. This is going to be it, because this is an area where no one has done it before. And I think if we somehow can manage to pull it off, we should be able to send a very effective message to the Malaysian public. Because what we are about to do at that time would potentially change what I consider as the most important element throughout the whole battle or war against food waste, which is our individual, our personal attitude, our habits, our approach towards consumption, the way we handle food, the way we actually treat food. So what happens is, falling back to our background as architects at that time. So to spill a little bit over of our background is we started documenting the weights the weights of food that we rescue. So it's not a very straightforward process where we send in our food warriors, our volunteers, to the point of rescue and we start extracting the food and that's it, off we go and we handle it. No, it doesn't work that way. What happens is there's actually assigned tasks to all our volunteers. There's actually a timekeeper where he or she monitors the time because we only allow ourselves a 3-hour rule where from the point of rescue to the point of consumption, it must be within the stipulated time frame and all. Right? We also work very closely with either the food caterers or hoteliers, so then they can actually slot in our prescribed SOP into their existing SOPs. Example, like keeping the food warm at a constant fixed temperature prior to the extraction of food from our people. So things like this are actually happening behind the scenes and all. So what happens is we do not store any food, right? It's not sustainable to do so. So you can imagine why it's always a race against time for us is because the moment we are done with the extraction of food, we almost immediately bring it to the nearest available beneficiary. Who are our beneficiaries? The whole spectrum of underprivileged people, families, the marginalized communities. It's not just made accessible to fellow Malaysians. It's not just the B40s. It's also the refugees, both documented, undocumented, to our street friends, the homeless, also to a wide variety of welfare homes. These food came to us for free, right? There's no cost element. There's no need for us to raise any funds to purchase any of these food. It's merely an effort to actually rescue all these food and putting a lot of commitment to actually go and do the extraction and passing it on and on. You see, when we have to understand when we do missions in our context, it's called food rescue missions. When we execute a food rescue mission, it did not come overnight. We had a lot of resistance. There's always a lot of no. When we actually advocate along or we work closely along with wedding couples to actually allow our organization to be deployed to do the extraction of food, because it's never been done before. And hotels throughout the world, they always have a food safety policy where you're not allowed to actually pack the food, to take the food and all. So it was the first breakthrough for What a Waste is that when we were able to actually perform and illustrate and showcase what this whole mission is all about. And that was when we eventually built and capitalized on that momentum. And the thing that I also very organically opened up a very tangible, sustainable venue for us is that wedding couples eventually found this to be a very appealing and unique wedding experience. And that naturally gave us the idea of coining this term called saying I do to the environment on the biggest day of your life, right? We are always in search of a unique wedding experience. I mean, what can be more unique, fulfilling, meaningful than to actually share if you have never shared food out, if you've never fed the poor before, but for once, for the first time in your life, you're able to do so. And give you such a poetic meaning to your wedding and all. And we have having done 200 over weddings in the course of 3 years. We have had wedding couples in their tuxedos, in their suits, in their wedding gowns, joining us at the back of the house, participating along our warriors to actually pack the food, and for them to actually, for their hands to actually hand out the food to the recipients. It really opens up them to a whole new perspective, a whole new meaning of life on humanity grounds. So whatever we do, right, in summary, is this all impactful initiative that we brainchild in What a Waste. The guiding principle is that we must always have an environmental benefit into it. So it's always killing 2 birds, if not 3 birds with 1 stone. So while rescuing food, we are also able to fully whether repurpose or rechannel, we are able to use these to directly eradicate poverty hunger. So we always say fighting food waste eradicates poverty hunger. So that's what we have been pioneering, if you like. And I suppose because of what we do and it's never been done before, it puts us in a slightly unique position. And today we have moved on from rescuing ready-to-eat meals to even handling tons and tons of other perishables like green vegetables, aging fruits, up to non-perishables, near expiry food items, nearing best before food items. And we have somehow successfully set up a whole system, an in-house system to actually repurpose all these food into ready-to-eat meals with nutritional values in mind. So that's what we have been able to do over the course of 3.5 years now. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alvin, for sharing. Yeah, I think someone texted in the chat, water waste weddings are a perfect example of using human-centered design in a design thinking process. I just have to say, Alvin, I love your slogan, like saying I do the environment on the best day of my life. And I just have to say, maybe water waste should call your wedding program Water Wedding or Water Waste Wedding.
Yeah, which we have. We actually registered an entity called What a Wedding. So
I thought I was being creative. I was like, maybe I can patent this and tell it to you.
Yeah, we actually have under the WAW connotation. Yeah, I mean we started off with What a Waste, but we have eventually branched out to have What a Wedding that actually looks into weddings. We also have What a Way and What a Win. So these are entities that has a specific role to it, but ultimately everything still falls back to the whole area of food waste. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alvin. Kind of like segueing away from Alvin's from non-profit standpoint. And my next question is for YB Michelle. So this is more from a policy making standpoint. So what policies have you personally pursued in the interest of ensuring both short-term and long-term food security and sustainability?
Yeah, thanks, Calvin. That's actually a very important question, especially in the times that we are talking today, not just in the context of COVID, which is where we started. You see, the Russia-Ukraine war, I'm sure throughout the entire world, it has brought about impact in terms of food security in different ways in Malaysia. In Malaysia, so much so that the subsidies for chicken, egg, and oil has been lifted, and that has caused a huge knock-on impact. Now, the reason stems from the interdependability of Malaysia on other countries. And so when you become too dependent on, in this case, chicken feed, for example, then when your supply of feed has depleted, your chicken has nothing to eat, the cost of it goes up, your people cannot afford chicken, you have a food crisis, right? So in Selangor, for our international friends, in Malaysia, we have 3 levels of government. The first is the federal government, state government, and local government. Now, I sit in the local government, and the jurisdiction that we handle is land, local government, religion, and licensing of a few other issues. So land becomes important because it determines what you can do in different areas, right? And agriculture, aside from that, forestry, mining, comes under the state government as well. So we sat down and we thought to ourselves that we really need to rethink how we produce meat. And so just recently, I'm talking about just 1 or 2 months ago, our state government, together with the Degrees and non-state government, has decided to invest long-term in planting our own corn, right? And that's important because corn is your basic ingredient when it comes to feed. So that's number 1. When you address that for the long term, then you address food security. Now, we talk about wars. Now we talk about climate change. In 3 years, we're going to face a drought in Malaysia. Long term for 10 years, all right? Going to be very serious. Food security is related to water security as well. And so, as Calvin said just now, during the introduction, I sit on the Select Committee on Water Resource, and this becomes a very, very important topic. Now, can we have enough water not just for consumption, but for irrigation, for our plantations as well. It's a big question mark that we really need to answer now. We're in 2022. 2025 is our target. If we don't solve it by then, we are going to have a bigger food crisis. So now we are pursuing a lot of investment in infrastructure, not just supply side management, but also demand side management. Selangor is severely lacking in demand management. You look at Singapore, they have an aim to reduce water consumption by 30% by 2030. And that's with good reason. Because Singapore's natural resources compared to Malaysia is much less. They don't have a lot of land, they don't have a lot of water bodies, right? But Malaysia, we have a plenty. And we take that for granted. Because we don't, as a result, only this year, during the Rancangan Selangor 1, which is the Selangor plan, first Selangor plan, there is a mention of, and even that, also no cogent policies when it comes to water demand management. Why is water demand important? You can produce all the water that you want, but if our residents continue to waste water, we will never be able to catch up, right? If we don't value water, we'll never be able to catch up. And in water security, there is a term called water reserve margin. Water reserve margin is so important. How you calculate it is supply minus demand is your reserve. If you don't have sufficient reserve, when a crisis happens, you depend on that. You need at least 15%. Selangor will only reach 15% if all the projects are ongoing and complete on time in 3 years. We are still not at 15%. You talk about Penang, Penang's already at 30-35%. So if a crisis happens there, they shouldn't have an issue. Of course, interconnectivity is another question. So water demand management is something that we really need to look into. Just for your information, World Health Organization suggests that in order to lead a comfortable life, we only need 165 liters per person. Can anyone guess how many liters per person per day in Selangor as of last month, the data that I have, we are consuming?
300.
Yeah, not that much.
Oh.
165 is what you need. Anyone? 200? Anyone else?
Okay, between 200, 300, 250.
260.
Oh, see?
260 liters per person, right? Which means that each of us need to reduce 100 liters per person per day in order to achieve the World Health Organization's target. So those are a few things that in Selangor we are pursuing when you talk about food security for the long term.
Thank you so much, YB. Yeah, in Selangor we have a very big issue with water.
Yeah.
I think YB Michelle, not only as a chairwoman of the committee, she deals with that, but also as a state assembly woman, when there's a water cut, these people don't sleep. They don't sleep the whole night, they are moving water. And I remember when I was 12 in 2013, we had water rationing because the water levels were so low that we only got supply of water twice a week. So you go to any household in Selangor, everyone has big tubs of like tanks that they fill up because of the water crisis. And I think the big issue is also that water in Malaysia is too cheap. Like people, economically, they have no incentive to save water, whereas in the US and Canada, water is so expensive. California, they charge you so much because California is internally drought. Whereas in Malaysia, people are like watering their lawns, washing their car, and they don't, it's very much on an individual level, like 100 liters per person, like Heinz. What's the Malaysia's like?
So actually, I don't think it's individual. I think there are policies that you can pursue in order to force people to save. Like what you said, tariff is a big component. Now in Selangor, your first 20 meter cube is only 6 ringgit, which is really, really cheap. Imagine if you are charged at the rate that, you talk about California, right? You will start thinking about how much you are using. Just like electricity, I'm not saying that we should raise tariff now in this economic climate, but I'm saying that it is low. And aside from that, you look at Singapore, a very good example, they invest in the Internet of Things, where smart meters are now installed for water. So which means from my phone, I will be able to determine immediately if there's a leak in my house. So if all the taps are closed, but it is still running for the last hour, something is wrong, and I'm able to address it early. Right now, I get my bill every month. So only then I will know whether my consumption has increased or not, whether there's wastage, right? So Singapore, there's that. And aside from that, there's a lot of investment in Singapore in studying their psychology. So they noticed that in Singapore, the Singaporeans are very competitive, right? There's a feature in their bill where they compare your water consumption with your neighbor's water consumption.
Wow, they put you in the percentile.
It's good because that encourages you. If your neighbor just beside you can do it, why can't I? And it works. It works wonders. Of course, education, all that is important, but there are tools that you definitely can use. And it's not incumbent on us being benevolent to reduce water consumption. And that's not the only way for us to deal with it. There's so many other policy considerations as well.
Actually, when we talk about Internet of Things and detecting water leaks, it's very embarrassing. My house had a water leak for the past 1 year, and we couldn't find it because our water pump was running throughout the night, and we would always turn off the water pump. Only last week, we went outside, we're like, wait, there's a puddle here.
Right.
So it took so long because sometimes it's located in places you barely see. Sometimes they are dripping, and then you think it's the rain. So, definitely technology can do a lot. So that's why, I think design thinking, there's a lot of things you all can tackle when it comes to food security. Even water is so closely related, as what Michelle has shared. I'm not sure if you Trang talked about this, about complex systems and how a lot of problems are interconnected. Food insecurity is definitely a very, very complex problem. I think if you map it, you do a system mapping, it's going to be enormous. So definitely, I think when coming with ideation later, at the moment we're very much focusing on empathizing, but when you do ideation, break down the problems into things that can be solved. Like how Alvin is what do I want to do? He can choose to save the world, or he can choose to save weddings. But if you try to save the world, you won't be able to do it, at least for now. Start somewhere, then you can grow, right? In reference to the Singaporean water comparison scheme, could that backfire when the neighbor's water consumption is higher? Would people feel entitled to more water?
No, because Singapore also couples it with other policies. So they couple it with tariff as well, and they also do a lot of education. So they literally go down to the ground in every school. Through your televisions, they're feeding information all the time. So it's not just one type mechanism, it's multiple, and therefore you foster a very comprehensive culture.
Yes, I would say Singapore is I'm not sure if you all are familiar with Malaysia and Singapore's history, but Singapore was a part of Malaysia. Then they left, got expelled. But they are doing much better than us in many ways. So look to Singapore as a role model, in some ways at least. All right, so I'll go to the next question, which is about Alvin. This one is more about how the process of starting up What a Waste. So Alvin, what inspired you to start What a Waste? And more specifically, given that you went into such a niche area like weddings, like What a Wedding, did you use the design thinking process to come up with the idea and solution?
Yeah, thanks, KP. So, I think the source of inspiration can be found in our daily life, in so many things and all. So, depends, what are the areas that you could resonate with and so on and so forth. But for me, you see, when I've always wanted to be an architect since primary 3, right? And I went on to pursue my dreams. Went through the natural process, and when I did architecture in Australia, I ventured into ecological sustainable design, something that at that time it wasn't very popular, right? Especially when you're talking about green building design, passive designs versus active solutions and all. But the thing that I always, as architects, I think during foundation here, the one thing that's always been drilled into your head is this. If there's no problem, you don't need an architect. Right? You don't go and engage an architect and telling them what you need, what needs to be done, what needs to be designed. If that's the case, then you don't need an architect. Actually, the main role as an architect is to identify the problems first, right? So having this mindset, what was my turning point or my calling was this. On one hand, which I've illustrated just now, the amount of food waste in Malaysia. And then you understand what doesn't make sense to us is this. Every year you have so many organizations, right, setting themselves up, wanting to fight food waste, which is very good, right? Due respect given to them. But the thing is, the statistics every year, the amount of food that is being wasted, it seems to keep increasing. Something somewhere along the line just doesn't make sense, right? And we eventually understand and realize that there's problems with there's problems in the approach, there's problems in the objective. Is there ulterior motive? There's so many areas. So what we find that, oh, okay, right? We wanted to we envision a platform that would be able to eventually rally for the participation of people, because we believe that that would be the ultimate winning factor. There's just so much I can do. That's just so much what a race can do. Very honestly speaking. But if we are able to inspire the participation of the public, then you would be able to get the sort of results that you wish to see. And that was the guiding, and that was the predetermining factor for us. And we listed down the things that not we want to do, but we listed down the things that we don't wish to do at Waterways. And one of which is we don't want to sustain ourselves through outright monetary donation from members of the public. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm not saying that it's right either. But I felt that there was an opportunity also, if we can pull it through, we would also be able to inspire, especially the younger generation, to say that, hey, look, wouldn't it be so cool that if your main source of income revolves around environmental benefits, revolves around you can even view it if you like, wow, feeding the poor, saving the environment, and it could actually be a career out of it. Those were the bits and pieces of how we actually conceptualize Waterways. So, and then the third thing is execution. Yeah, we have the idea, we have the concept, we have the approach, but how are we able to execute with little to no funds, right? We had no funds, they had no surplus funds at that time. So we only got to do it, the only avenue for us to do it is through social media. And the good thing that complements us is this, because we are not a food bank, we're not a soup kitchen, there literally isn't a need to have a physical space. We were running Waterways without any physical space for at least a good 13 to 14 months. So there's no cost element from that. There weren't any rents to pay, there weren't any utility bills to pay. We were always working at someone else's venue, someone else's place, right? So there's no cost element. So when we first started, again, I go back to the wedding scenes and all. Yes, we may be the first to rate the wedding scenes and bring upon certain meaning to it. But how are we able to bring it to the next level? That's also points of consideration and all. So that was when we almost immediately told ourselves or disciplined ourselves that food waste needs to be taken. Now, when we share our daily food rescue activities at our social media, Facebook, Instagram, you can see, if you go into Waterways in Facebook, you can see the whole spectrum of 4 years of daily activities that we have actually documented that. Now, the reason why we do that is not because, we need beautiful pictures or nice images, right, to get more likes or shares or to get empathy or sympathy about what we do. It's not about what we do, but it's about showing you that if each and every one of us were to develop a slight sensitivity to the fact that throwing away food is like stealing from the tables of the poor. There's every truth in it. You see, throwing away food is tantamount to stealing from the tables of the poor. Then you will naturally come to personal realization that, perhaps my approach towards food was not quite right. There are room for improvement. There are elements or ways that I can explain myself. So that was what we instilled in our people across the board. And with this in mind, with a platform that was aggressively rescuing food from all sorts of venues, we managed, it didn't take us long to get a breakthrough. But I must share this very honestly. The question that should be lurking in your mind is that how then do we sustain ourselves as an organization, right? That there being no public donations, how then, what is fueling, who is paying for our logistic costs and all? There are actually cost elements, right, which is kept minimal. So what the first breakthrough that we were able to achieve is that we actually formulated out a service fee, right? People initially, you may think that, well, wouldn't it be a bit ridiculous? I want to pass you on my food and I got to pay you for that. But I want to inspire you this, if you were to be able to change a little bit of connotation, your script, right? Like in our context, saying I do to the environment, like how you actually rally or motivate them towards the environmental benefits and all, you will be able to get breakthroughs. And what the sort of breakthrough that we were able to achieve is that for every wedding scene, eventually we were actually being compensated 1 ringgit per guest pack. Right? So if you have 300 guest packs, we would have 300 ringgit plus 5 ringgit per kg, per kilogram of food that we rescue. So on average, we probably are looking at, a typical wedding scene in Malaysia would probably give us about 500 minimum to 1,000 plus ringgit of income. And it's sufficient. And we actually got our break even in business context. We actually got our break even in 4 months' time. And we had surplus to even grow, to even compensate our volunteers, right? We were able to do it. And when we were at peak, MCO came. COVID came, right? It put a hard stop to all the effort and time that we have actually put in for the last 12 to 14 months, building upon an identity, successfully putting it to nationwide, arguably. And at that time, we had about registered people writing in, we had about a total of 230 volunteers, members of the public, from all races, from all nationality, from all ages. They were with us on and off whenever time permits. And then MCO came, COVID came, but we were just very, very blessed and fortunate that by then, word has gotten to the mouth that there's actually a platform that actually handles surplus food. And we once again, were put in the next phase of growth as an organization where the movement went to appeal to farmers, right, to plantation owners. And that was really the whole COVID era was the period where we were literally dealing with tons and tons and tons of all sorts of perishable food ingredients, ranging from, as I mentioned, vegetables to all sorts of food ingredients and all. And very naturally, with this amount of ingredients that we had, and we were very blessed to be given also the opportunity to synergize with Wadi Michelle's office. They were pointing us to the direction of all the underprivileged people from within our communities, and also the reach out was very fast. We were also in the whole white flag movement, doing our bit. And it even got to the stage where, okay, despite outrightly distributing all these ingredients to the families, there was still considerable amount of surplus and all. So again, naturally going back to the planning table, we made a very quick decision. Everyone was mandated to be at home, right, throughout the whole COVID period. So that was when we recruited home cooks. And we naturally again started, a partner cook program, very naturally and organically. We were able to recruit about 40 to 50 home cooks, and we passed on all these ingredients to them, and they were repurposing all these food powders into ready to eat. And that's just a very clear showcase that even without food packs donation and all, we were able to repurpose or give significant value from all these unwanted surplus ingredients and pass it on and repurpose it into food packs. And we were hitting about 2,000 to 3,000 food packs every day, and we were distributing throughout Selangor. But the journey was really a joy because there weren't any jam, so it really doesn't matter if we were traveling from Subang, Jaya all the way to even other parts, because it was a breeze through traveling along the highways and all. So reaching out throughout Selangor wasn't an issue at all for us, and that was what. And today, we further refine our partner cook program into a B40 cook program, where we single out single mothers from the B40 communities who can cook, and that has become a source of main income for them, where they have a zero cost element, they don't have to cough up money to purchase their food ingredients. We provide that, they cook, we pay them on per pack basis, and we empower them to use the food that they cook, representing us, to feed their fellow neighbors. So that's just what we have been able to create within the community.
Thank you so much, Alvin. We have about 1.5 minutes left until we have to leave the call and join it back again because of constraints. I saw a few questions in the chat. I'm noting them down. We will ask that after join back. Just a few comments about what Alvin said. I don't even know if I have time to give comments. One is that he talked about how some organizations related to food aid might not be helping the problem. And I think it's very important that when you're designing solutions, you might have a successful solution, a not successful solution, and even a solution that completely backfires. That makes the problem worse. There's this story I'm just going to share really quick, then we'll join and come back. In India, when it was under British rule, they wanted to get rid of cobras. There were too many cobras. So they made an incentive of saying like, oh, I'm going to pay you like maybe a few dollars if you bring me a dead cobra. So people started like catching all the cobras, then they ran out of cobras, then they started breeding their own cobras. So then the British were like, no, this isn't working, so they just stopped the incentive, and these people were like, what am I going to do with the cobras? They just set them free. So the problem literally got worse. So that's very important to take note when you're designing a solution, that you need to prototype and ideate and test it out if it's going to work. Because if you don't do that, it's going to make the problem worse. Okay, we're going to leave and come back, so just join the link immediately after this. I'm going to end the meeting and just join the link again.